Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Rangana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Rangana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shinyavadi Vashakari Shakarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shinyavadi Vashakari Shakarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare
Shrimadbhagavatam Hamsa Pravarjika Jaya Asutara Shita Shishi with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shila Jaya Shrimadbhagavatam Hamsa Pravarjika Jaya Asutara Shita Shishi with His Divine Grace Bhakti Vedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki Jai All glories to Assembled Devotees, all glories to Assembled Devotees, all glories to Assembled Devotees, all glories to Guru Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Thank you all for joining this morning Shrimadbhagavatam class from ISKCON Detroit. We are in Canto 1, and we'll be reading Canto 1, Chapter 13, Text 30. Before we get started, we'll just say a quick prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayam Namaskrityam.
Narayanam Namaskrityam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Sarasatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayudire.
Tato Jayamudire.
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki.
Hare Krishna. So again, we're reading Canto 1, Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra Quits Home, and it's text 30. Patim prayantam subalasya putri.
Patim prayantam subalasya putri.
Pati vrata kanu jagama sadvi.
Pati vrata chanu jagama sadvi.
Himalayam yasta danda praharasham.
Himalayam yasta danda praharsham.
Manasvinam iva sat samprahara.
Manasvinamiva sat samprahara.
Patim prayantam subalasya putri.
Patim prayantam subalasya putri.
Pati vratakanu jagama sadvi.
Pati vrata chanu jagama sadvi.
Himalayam yasta danda praharasam.
Himalayam yasta danda praharsham.
Manasvinam iva sat samprahara.
Manasvinamiva sat samprahara.
Patim prayantam subalasya putri.
Patim prayantam subalasya putri.
Pati vratakanu jagama sadvi.
Pati vrata chanu jagama sadvi.
Himalayam nastya danda praharasam.
Himalayam yastadanda praharsam
Manasvinam iva satsam praharaha.
Manasvinami ivasat samparaha.
We will say the word for word. Please follow along or repeat. Patim,
Patim,
her husband,
her husband,
Prayantam,
Prayantam,
while leaving home,
while leaving home,
Shubhalasya,
Subhalasya,
of King Shubhala,
of King Subhala,
Putri,
Putri,
the worthy daughter,
the worthy daughter,
Pativrata,
Pativrata,
devoted to her husband,
devoted to her husband,
Cha,
Cha,
also,
also,
Anugama,
Anujagama,
followed,
followed,
Sadvi,
Sadvi,
the chaste,
the chaste,
Himalayam,
Himalaya,
towards the Himalaya mountains,
towards the Himalaya mountains,
Nistya Danda,
Nyasta Danda,
one who has accepted the rod of the renounced order,
one who has accepted the rod of the renounced order,
Prahashram,
Praharsham,
object of delight,
object of delight,
Manasvinam,
Manasvinam,
of the great fighters,
of the great fighters,
Eva, like,
like,
Sat,
Sat,
legitimate,
legitimate,
Samparahara,
Samprahara,
good lashing.
good lashing.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Translation. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Shubhala of Gandhara, or Gandhara, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. Please repeat. The gentle and chaste Gandhari,
The gentle and chaste Gandhari,
who was the daughter of King Shubhala
who was the daughter of King Subala,
of Gandhara or Gandhara,
of Kandahar or Gandhara,
followed her husband,
followed her husband,
seeing that he was
seeing that he was
going to the Himalaya mountains,
going to the Himalaya mountains,
which are the delight
which are the delight
of those who have
of those who have
accepted the staff
accepted the staff
of the renounced order,
of the renounced order,
like fighters
like fighters
who have accepted
who have accepted
a good lashing from the enemy.
a good lashing from the enemy.
Purport. Shobhalini or Gandhari, daughter of King Shubhala and wife of King Dhritarashtra, was ideal as a wife, devoted to her husband. The Vedic civilization especially prepares chaste and devoted wives, of whom Gandhari is one among many mentioned in history. Lakshmi Ji Sita Devi was also a daughter of a great king, but she followed her husband, Lord Ramachandra, into the forest. Similarly, as a woman, Gandhari could have remained at home or at her father's house, but as a chaste and gentle lady, she followed her husband without consideration. Instructions for the renounced order of life are imparted to Dhritarashtra by Vidura, and Gandhari was by the side of her husband. But he did not ask her to follow him because he was at that time fully determined, like a great warrior who faces all kinds of dangers in the battlefield. He was no longer attracted to so-called wife or relatives, and he decided to start alone. But as a chaste lady, Gandhari decided to follow her husband till the last moment. Maharaj Dhritarashtra accepted the order of Vanaprastha, and at this stage, the wife is allowed to remain as a voluntary servitor. But in the sannyas stage, no wife can stay with her former husband. A sannyasi is considered to be a dead man civilly, and therefore the wife becomes a civil widow, without connection with her former husband. Maharaj Dhritarashtra did not deny his faithful wife, as she followed her husband at her own risk. The sannyasi accepts a rod as the sign of the renounced order of life. There are two types of sannyasis: those who follow the Mayavadi philosophy, headed by Sripad Shankaracharya, accepts only one rod, ekadanda, but those who follow the Vaishnavite philosophy accept three combined rods, tridanda. The Mayavadi sannyasi, or ekadanda swamis, here, whereas the Vaishnava sannyasi are known as tridanda swami, or more directly, or more distinctly, Tridandi Goswami, in order to be distinguished from the Mayavadi philosophers. The Ekadanda Swamis are mostly fond of the Himalayas, but the Vaishnava sannyasis are fond of Vrindavan and Puri. The Vaishnava sannyasis are Northamas, where the Mayavadi sannyasis are Dhiras. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was advised to follow the Dhiras because at that stage it was difficult for him to become a Narottama. Okay. Reading the translation one more time. The gentle and chaste Gandhari, who was the daughter of King Shubala of Gandhar or Gandhara, followed her husband, seeing that he was going to the Himalaya mountains, which are the delight of those who have accepted the staff of the renounced order, like fighters who have accepted a good lashing from the enemy. Right. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantitam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, interesting today. So, Vidur and Dhritarashtra, King Dhritarashtra, they have kind of concluded their discussion, the lessons, the strong lessons that have been going on. So here in Bhagavatam, it's actually a moment, a very instructive moment that is taking place, and it is now the renunciation of Dhritarashtra. And in this particular verse, I wanted to just pull out, there's always a lot, but I just wanted to pull out this topic of the character of Gandhari, because we hear about these personalities, these female personalities within Bhagavatam, but just wanted to go into some of their character as we read today. After being strongly instructed by Vidura, Dhritarashtra finally awakes to the reality that he's lost everything, that he's old. His body is old and death is going to be imminent. So he finally gets it. So he's ready to leave his house now, or leave his home, and practice spiritual life. And we see here that, okay, he's determined ready to go alone, to the Himalayas. But what is significant here is that Gandhari, his wife, is going to follow him. So this ideal of pativrata, right? Bhagavatam uses this word pativrata. This refers to a woman who is fully dedicated to her husband, not sentimentally, like, oh, this is, but more from a spiritual perspective. So to understand this, we have to understand, like, Gandhari, right, who she was. She's not an ordinary woman. When she got married, she first of all voluntarily blindfolded herself for life. I don't know how many women would do that. Probably zero, right? So, she tolerated so much immense suffering. She lost all 100 of her sons, right, to this war that didn't really need to take place, right? But obviously it's Krishna's arrangement. But she's always remained very fixed in dharma, right, and stuff. So this is the character. This is not like an ordinary person. Like, I don't know anyone who would have tolerated or had this particular strength as Gandhari has shown. And one word that describes in this particular verse that is used to describe her is this word chastity, right? So in modern society, chastity is misunderstood or sometimes even rejected. It's not looked upon very favorably. But here Bhagavatam shows that chastity means loyalty, right? How she did not waver in her loyalty to Dhritarashtra, even though he was doing certain questionable things, right? Her sacrifice, the fact that she blindfolded, and so many other sacrifices that she did. And she was always spiritually aligned, right? She always had strong faith in Krishna. So Gandhari was not a weak individual. Her chastity didn't bring her down. It didn't make her weak. She was, in fact, extremely strong, a very strong female personality. And to follow an old husband into the forest, or to follow him in this process of renunciation, and to accept this austerity, leaving the comforts of everything behind, palace life and so forth, that requires tremendous amount of determination too, right? So on her behalf, she has this immense amount of determination. And chastity in Bhagavatam also is explained as a single-pointed loyalty, focus, rooted in dharma, like in duty, and ultimately it is connected to Krishna. So chastity is not something separate from bhakti or Krishna consciousness, right? So in Bhagavatam, story after story, we hear about this exclusive devotion, right? And just as the soul should be faithful to Krishna, right? Because we've learned, lesson number 1 in Bhagavad Gita, we are not this particular body, we are spirit soul. So this applies to everyone, male, female, it doesn't matter. But the soul should be faithful to Krishna. And a devotee should not be distracted by what? Material senses, right? Maya. We're under these 3 modes of material nature, we're little puppets, right? Material desires are hitting us left and right, but a devotee should not be distracted, because we know as a soul, I need to follow the instructions, be faithful to Krishna. So similarly, a chaste wife represents exclusive devotion, right? So chastity is actually like a reflection of bhakti. So a chaste wife represents this concept of exclusive devotion or dedication as well too. So chastity is actually like this reflection of bhakti, right? It's not just like moral or, it's more theological than that. So if we look at Gandhari specifically, we see the fact that she blindfolded, tolerated so much injustice, suffering, and then now following her husband into this renunciation. Even then, even when everything was destroyed in her life, she did not abandon her duty. So a chaste wife, or someone who has chastity within them, wife, male, female, however you want to call it, they don't abandon their duty. They follow this dharma. And chastity is not dependent on this comfort, right? It is based on it's based on principle and commitment, right? Like, if this is my particular duty, this is what I don't waver from that particular duty. And we have beautiful examples in Bhagavatam that I thought we can just think about and bring up. Gandhari obviously is Gandhari is one beautiful example. But then we also see within this family Kunti Devi, right? Kunti Devi also showed a form of chastity. In her case, not just to husband, but to Dharma and to Krishna, right? And stuff. Because she was widowed very early. She lost her husband very early on. And she had to face so much danger, but never wavered, right? From the burning of the house or going into the forest or raising, she had to raise the Pandavas alone, essentially, right? Raising 5 boys. I have 2, and that was enough. Prabhu's that's it. So, raising them, although there were, and stuff. Still, she never deviated from righteousness, right? She always kept to her duty. She always followed her principles. She always depended on Krishna, right? She never lost that level of spirituality. In fact, her famous prayer that everyone knows is, let calamities, happen again and again. And this is the chastity at a higher level, right? So there's faithfulness. Hers is faithfulness to Krishna in all conditions, right? Never losing that faith. And Gandharvi, we saw, was chastity based on principle and commitment. So chastity, faithfulness to Krishna, principled, and commitment. Another example is Draupadi, right, within this family. She's also one who's in a different perspective. She had 5 husbands, right, and stuff. But Bhagavatam shows that she was also very completely chaste. And why was this? Because she also followed Dharma perfectly. Even though she had 5 husbands, she followed perfectly. She was fully surrendered to Krishna as well. We saw that at the time of her disrobing that happened in that court. She did not depend on anyone else. She surrendered and fully depended on Krishna. This is ultimate chastity, right? Exclusive shelter in the Supreme. So chastity is principle, commitment, faithfulness to Krishna in all conditions, exclusive shelter, understanding that the Lord is my exclusive shelter. This is the different qualities of chastity. Devahuti, another example. She was wife of Kardama Muni, right? And she served her husband, if you read this particular pastime, her husband with full dedication, right? Lived very austerely, despite even being a princess, right? She came from a princess royal class, again, with all comfort, but she lived with such austerity, with Kardama Muni. And, she wanted a child, and Kardama Muni was in short, I will give you a child. I have to finish my, meditation and so forth. And, and so she supported it and supported him fully in that endeavor and so forth. And then, then came time, and she received, who was the son? Lord Kapila, who is none other than the Supreme Lord himself. And if we see her story, right, like with the birth of Lord Kapila Dev, right, she became full devotee, right? Like he instructed her, the son instructed Devahuti, and she became spiritually perfect, right, under those. So chastity, even though there may be some austerity and so forth, it leads to spiritual perfection, right? Because we understand that we have this full shelter. We take full shelter of the Supreme. We have faith in the Krishna, and we always stay within our principles and committed, right? So again, all these qualities of chastity. Another example, last example, Sita Devi, which is brought up in this particular verse as well too. She was kidnapped by Ravana, right? So put in a compromised position. But even then, even though she was living in that extreme distress, she never deviated her mentality even for a moment, right? She didn't succumb to even this year-long or this long time, being away. So chastity is not necessarily physical, but it's a mental and emotional purity. She stayed pure throughout that whole time, right? And so forth. So chastity, another quality, is this purity. And it's not just physically being pure and not having outside relations or anything like that, but it's also mental and emotional purity. So having this purity, leading a life to spiritual perfection, having Krishna as your exclusive shelter, this faithfulness in Krishna, living a life of very dharma, right? Principle and commitment. These are all things that makes one, or the qualities of someone who's chaste, right? And why be chaste, right? There's a power in chastity that sometimes it gets like diluted in this material world, or we don't always consider chastity as such a powerful and important quality, right, for someone. In Vedic literature, though, chastity basically gives us spiritual strength, right? It's something that gives us spiritual strength. So as a chaste woman is described, and we see in all of these different examples, right, they have this great inner power, right? Where does it come from? It comes from them being chaste, right? This moral authority, right? They did not deviate at all from their morals or their principles or their commitments and so forth. So it gave them such wonderful spiritual strength. And their spiritual influence also, having this faith in Krishna, having this complete surrender and shelter within Krishna, right? All of this gives them this spiritual strength. And it's because their focus was one, right? They didn't deviate in their focus. They stayed steadfast in that, and they remained pure. So all of these things put together, right? This gives us this immense amount of intellect, the strength, the power, the determination. So, and unfortunately, in this day and age, right, chastity sometimes is related to like oppression or blind submission, or it's based on fear. But this is not true, right? Like this is unfortunately in the world we live in, right? Chastity is actually something that's voluntary, right? So it is something we see here in Gandharvi's case. She could easily have gone to her father's home, right? She could even took shelter within this particular home, right? Because a woman should always be in the shelter of either son, husband, the Lord, father. But she voluntarily continued to follow her husband till the end, right? And it was a conscious decision. It wasn't something that was forced to do, or like you have to go blindly with them, even though there were taking on that position and stuff like that. It was something that was consciously done. And it was, most importantly, spiritually grounded, right? This is in Vanaprastha. After we live our Grahastha life, those who are married couples, we live our Grahastha life. At a certain age, it says in the scriptures, like at age 50, you take to what is known as Vanaprastha life, right? This retired life. And in this life, what happens is, even though wife and husband are together, right, their focus becomes more spiritual, more on the eternal. Your material life, your building of your spiritual life, at this point, you're exclusively developing a life of determined focus on spirituality, right, of Krishna consciousness. So even though she went with her husband, the point was to be spiritually grounded, to be in that point where you're fully Krishna consciousness, right? So we even see, actually, in Bhagavatam, interestingly enough, an opposite, or I wouldn't say even opposite, but situations in where the husband is adharmic, or doesn't follow, Krishna consciousness. And Bhagavatam does not support following blindly, right? Like, does not support like this blind following. But we can see in an example, Mandodari, right? The wife of Ravan, King Ravan, and he was evil, right? I mean, he was very intelligent. He had some spiritual basis if we listen to him speak and so forth. But at the same time, he was a demon and so forth. And she was the queen of Lanka, right? The wife of Ravana. And she was actually well known for her wisdom. She was also a very chaste wife and very righteous and principled. She repeatedly actually advised Ravana to return like Sita, back to Lord Ram and like avoid this oncoming destruction and so forth. So many warnings were given. And despite being married to such a powerful, like demoniac, adharmic type husband, she remained virtuous though, and devoted, very much devoted. So, in this day and age, following a husband does not mean like accepting abuse. It doesn't mean supporting adharma or situations. It doesn't mean losing moral judgment, right? So even in the scriptures, we see that Mandodari was challenged by Ravana, right? Or she challenged Ravana. In fact, when he was killed by Lord Ram, right? She was like, "You are a fool," right? You brought this on yourself, and so forth. So she even, being chaste doesn't mean that you're just following things blindly, or you can accept this abuse or whatnot and stuff. Even Draupadi, she questioned this injustice, right? She addressed everyone in the court, like, how can you do this? And so forth. So this real strength, part of this chastity, includes speaking of the truth, right? And standing up for dharma. So that is something that's also within this. And when we look at this particular, concept and this principle, it really means when a person has aligned themselves with this higher dharmic purpose and commits very deeply, he gains the strength and this inner freedom, right? And this applies to anybody, man, woman, anyone on a spiritual path. So when we look at chastity and bhakti together, actually the highest chastity is what we see is the soul's chastity to Krishna, right? Being this determined to follow Krishna, being determined to follow the principles and instructions of Krishna. So if we look at, for example, the gopis of Vrindavan, another example, right? They left everything for Krishna. They were fully surrendered to Krishna, right? And from a material perspective, many times their actions looked very improper. Running away in the middle of the night, like from their homes and so forth, leaving their children, all this kind of stuff. But spiritually, it is the highest form of this exclusive love, this exclusive dedication, exclusive devotion, right? So this is a principle, the spiritual chastity, to be exclusively surrendered to Krishna. Now, in real life, right, in our particular modern life, how do we apply this today? What does this mean for me and stuff? So the essence of this is more important. And so, again, man, women, doesn't matter, but everyone can learn to be faithful, right? The very first Shuddha, the very first level of coming to Krishna consciousness is to develop this faith and to make it deeper and deeper and deeper as we hear, chant, associate, take Krishna Prashadam, right? So building our faith. Being responsible also, not only for our actions, but taking the responsibility to learn, to hear, and so forth, to become more Krishna consciousness. Being responsible for our spiritual growth. Aligning ourselves correctly in spirituality, right? Following those that are on the correct path. Unfortunately, today with YouTube and so many things, you can get sidetracked into so many different philosophies. In fact, so many times I hear people making up their own philosophy. I'm spiritual, but I believe in this and that and that. Based on Shastra, based on previous acharyas, become spiritually aligned. And to be honest, avoiding frivolous relationships, right? When one takes a commitment to a husband, to a wife, right? We don't, one of the things that break dharma is by having inappropriate relationships, right? And so forth. So avoiding these things, avoiding putting yourself in a situation where that could come about as well. And most importantly, having spiritual goals, being chaste to your spiritual goals, right? And so forth. It's very important that, I know we have this thing every year, New Year's resolutions and so forth like that. You don't necessarily have to do New Year's resolutions, but you should have spiritual goals. What are you doing for your soul, right? On a daily basis. We make so many, I'm going to be, strong, I'm going to be mentally, I'm going to read, whatever. We have all kinds of goals. Make spiritual goals in your life. If you plan to progress in spirituality, if you plan to progress in Krishna consciousness, it's important to have spiritual goals and so forth. So yes, many topics were given in this particular verse, but Gandharvi is, her chastity is very glorious. It's something that we can learn from very nicely. And, just because, or something we can pull away from this is just as she followed her husband into the forest, we must also follow Krishna out of this material life, right? We are all in this quagmire, deep burning forest of, samsara and so forth. So to get out of it, we must follow Krishna out of it. So let him be your husband. So, just conclusion, chastity is, being spiritually focused. It is very much rooted in dharma and duty. It gives us the strength, the purity, and it should all culminate into this devotion in Krishna, right? And stuff. So this is a little bit of what I wanted to say today. I know there's some other topics in here about sannyasis and so forth, but maybe we'll let the sannyasis speak on that and so forth. But thank you so much for your time and attention. Please take to this process of becoming chaste. It is very glorious, and you will see how that changes your life, actually. So, for the better. So thank you so much. Jai Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Any comments or questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Mataji, wonderful class. When we hear in general chaste means we generally go with that, like wife only has to be chaste. But the thing you said, we have to think in the perspective of soul. We have to chase Krishna.
Yeah.
That is more important than this temporary things.
Yeah.
Because in this lifetime we may be female, but in next lifetime we will know what we might be. So,
Yeah.
and ultimately Krishna is the Purusha and we are all the female only.
Yes.
It's very important to reach us to our Supreme Father,
Yes.
Sri Krishna. Thank you.
Very nice, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you, for sure. Thank you so much for joining us. Come again tomorrow. And if you don't have Shrimadbhagavatam, please take a copy and read it and apply it. It is a most glorious way to live a life and wonderful examples. Also, thank you so much. We had our Ram Navami celebration, but upcoming next month in April, which is today's April 1st, April Fool's Day. The April 30th, we'll be celebrating Nrsimhadev Chaturdasi, so please join us for our next festival as well, too. Thanks. And Saturdays, we have Bhagavad Gita classes, so please join us. Continue learning and educating yourself in this philosophy, in this study of the soul, every Saturday at 5:30, so please join us. Very most important study is the Department of the Soul. So thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai. Grantharaj Shrimadbhagavatam ki jai.